Hello, everybody. The only evidence that Matt Waters still exists on the internet is back. It's Mike and Matt's X-Cellent Adventures. We're on episode 6. Who would have thought we'd make it this far? And there's only going to be like 8 to 10, so we're actually on the closing stretch, and I'm kind of sad about it. Mike, how do you feel?
I think it's like 9 to 12, because there's 9 movies.
Yeah, okay, fine.
And we got some bonus episodes.
Yeah, alright. Well, we just came off talking about a return to form with X-Men First Class, and today we are going to have to talk about it's not as bad as The Last Stand or Origins Wolverine, but it's not very good, and it is just simply called The Wolverine. So it is one of the few that doesn't have X-Men in the title, and it's boring.
Yeah, it's we literally just watched this movie like in the last 2 to 3 hours each, I think, and it's really boring.
Yeah.
Like Last Stand and Origins Wolverine are fascinating and how bad they are. This one's just boring. And I think they actually had a lot of good ideas on paper, which I guess we can get into, but honestly, this movie's pretty boring.
Yeah, like how on paper you make a film about a man with knives on his hand fighting ninjas. Boring, I don't know.
Well, first off, you make it really dour.
Yes.
Just make it as dour as humanly possible, because we wouldn't want to have fun at a superhero movie.
And then fill it with boring or stereotypical or one-note characters.
Yeah. And inexplicable plot twists, and it's not even like they do a good job of setting up future movies, so you can't even lean on that. Like, if anything, they just make it kind of more confusing and make it harder for them. Like, there's this movie is for those who don't know, it's more of a sequel to The Last Stand than a sequel to Wolverine prequel, that was a good decision.
Yes.
It somewhat bridges the gap between. It kind of sets the stage, I'd say, not bridge the gap, sets the stage for X-Men Days of Future Past in a few subtle ways. But if you would think that the primary job of that would be to set Wolverine up for that moment, it just makes it more confusing. It doesn't actually do anything to actually set him up. If anything, you're just like, wait a second, how did he end up there? What? And yeah. Do you have a plot summary? Should we explain what happened in this movie?
Yeah, I've got one of those. I wrote one out and then thought, this sounds like a way more fun movie than I know it is. So as you said, it is not another prequel. This is a sequel. This is, at present, the latest in the timeline. And it all actually begins in 1945, which is not the present. Wolverine saves the life of a Japanese soldier in Nagasaki, continuing the trend established in Origins Wolverine, where we are seeing X-Men in real-world events. And Wolverine, of course, can survive it because of his powers.
Remember, literally a nuclear bomb survives a nuclear bomb.
Well, kind of, yeah.
That's a nuclear bomb.
It is, but, he's not, right in the middle of it.
He is so powerful that not only he can survive it, but he can block anything coming through it for the most part and save someone else. People were not being saved by being a story underneath the ground for a nuclear, as far as I know. Speaking of things I did not know, I actually did not know that we knew for sure that there were confirmed Allied POWs on Nagasaki when we dropped the bomb, or Hiroshima. So that's an added layer of fucked up when it comes to dropping the bomb.
Well, he's only Canadian, so.
But there's a whole host of POWs there.
Yeah, there are. And no Sabretooth, even though we saw in the canon they were together until after Vietnam, so.
And what's weird, I wouldn't know this. I'm not an expert in military history for sure, but we know for a fact they were in Europe, I think on D-Day, right? We saw footage of them on D-Day, so that's 1944. Mm-hmm. How many soldiers were transferred to Japan between 1944 and 1945? Now, granted,
if I came out with an answer, you would be stunned, wouldn't you?
And I'm not saying it as it's impossible. I'm saying is if any of the 5 people listening know that answer, please let us know in the comment section, because
there you go.
I mean, like, you can, like, twist it and conform it, like, oh, maybe he wasn't following orders, he went on his own, maybe he abandoned Sabretooth there or something like that and went to Japan. It's just for someone who seems so, like, by that point, based on the montages we've seen, a little bit, like, tired of war, like, that doesn't really hold up.
No. Well, I think the realistic answer is they were just ignoring Origins Wolverine already.
Which is for the best.
Yes.
Which is absolutely for the best.
All right, so he does that in 1945. Cut to the present, i.e. a few years after X-Men The Last Stand. Logan is living in the Yukon, I believe, with a gnarly beard, long hair, just full-on wild man living in the wilderness, saying what's up to bears, you know.
Which means at some point since The Last Stand, where we last see him looking super-duper happy because everything is fixed, I guess, he is gone in the complete opposite direction of whatever emotion he was feeling that day.
Yes, and we see him having multiple dreams about Jean Grey, who is almost taunting him. But it is his subconscious, this isn't real Jean, let's point that out right now. And he's like vowed not to kill anyone anymore, and he almost breaks that vow immediately because some dudes kill a bear, and obviously that's not cool with Wolverine as he is an animal himself. But he is stopped by Yukio, who is an associate of the soldier he saved all those years ago. And he's invited to Japan to say goodbye to him and repay the debt of saving his life and blah, blah, blah. He goes. This man wants to medically take his healing power and heal himself with it, which we'll talk about that in a bit. And also he perceives that Logan doesn't want to be alive anymore, so he's trying to offer him freedom from that. He says no. There's a big, crazy plot. This man dies. There's a big plot for sort of ownership of the company, and his son and his granddaughter Mariko, who Logan saves from Yakuza assassins, and they run off together and obviously fall in love because it's Logan. His healing factor breaks because of a little robot spider attached to his heart. She gets kidnapped anyway. He figures out who's behind it, blah, 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 gets his powers back, goes, fights many ninjas, boringly somehow, and confronts the person behind all this, which is the presumed dead Yashida, the soldier he saved, who is not dead. He is in a big giant suit of adamantium that keeps him alive. They fight, he cuts Logan's claws off, and then he starts extracting his healing power directly from his bone marrow, and starts to become young again, but Mariko stabs him in the neck, and Logan throws him from a very high height, and he dies. And then Logan leaves for no real reason, because he's got nowhere to go, but him and Yukio go off on a plane to do who even knows what for 2 years. And then when he comes back to America, in a post-credits or mid-credits scene, we see him get confronted by Magneto and Xavier, who warn him of an impending danger. Doesn't that sound somewhat more interesting than the actual film is?
No.
No, okay.
I mean, a little bit. The film's very not interesting, so I'll say this. It's a better Hugh Jackman performance than Origins or Last Stand.
Yep.
It's a little bit closer to form. Although, what I did quickly recognize after this movie is that of the 6 X-Men films where Wolverine has had a large role, the only 3 that I really, truly enjoyed him, Bryan Singer was directing the movie, so there's probably something to that. I think Bryan Singer has a better understanding of Wolverine than anyone else at this point.
Yeah, even with how deeply Hugh Jackman has thrown himself into it, like he's bigger, he's bigger than ever this time, and he'd been wanting to do Japan for years and years, and he's finally done it.
Yeah, so
this comes in a post-Avengers world.
That's why I was going to say, it was... So there's 2... We did the history of comic books each time, and in 2013, you're dealing with a few things going on. One, the Avengers just came out and was pretty much a phenomenon, and made everyone has made almost everyone forget about how poor Marvel had been doing so far in terms of making quality movies. And now Marvel seems pretty untouchable, despite the fact that in 2013 they would release 2 pretty mediocre movies in Iron Man 3 and Thor 2. Regardless, Marvel's kind of on top of the world at this point, and they've kind of set the standard for what to expect from movies, like for like this kind of movie, for better or worse, whether or not that's what. So, and then at the same time, the other two competing studios when it comes to comic book movies, be Sony and Warner Brothers this time. Dark Knight Rises comes out in 2012 to decidedly mixed reviews, and the very divisive movie, but it's over. The Amazing Spider-Man is released, and it kind of makes everyone go, what are we doing? So this is kind of a critical moment for X-Men and Fox. They have to kind of nail this. Like, they can't afford to waste any more time. And they neither provide a satisfying movie in a bubble, nor are they able to build the franchise out so that it feels satisfying in other ways. Like, Marvel right now has so much credibility that, like, even if a movie doesn't really work tremendously, people are gonna be like, hey, it's still a Marvel movie, the story's continuing. Like, they're making every movie into like a 2-hour episode of a long-running TV show, which, like, there's ways to find that satisfying. X-Men does not have that right now, and movies like this are the reason why. Like, it's just, you can't try to do the big expansive universe thing and just have a bunch of things that don't make any sense, that don't line up. Like, why does this movie end with Wolverine not having adamantium on his claws if in the next movie he's going to have adamantium on his claws? Like, we know that's not a simple process.
But
like,
Magneto is his friend now, so...
I mean, yeah, but that's the point, though. It's like they just rather... Like, they don't commit to that, and they're not making a good movie. So it's just... It's what we talked about. Like, these mistakes seem more important when you have bad movies.
Yeah, like, why even cut them off? Like...
Yeah, if you're just going to cut them off, why put them back on if putting them back on was such a non-thing?
Yeah.
Anyway, so this story, there was a point when you were doing the recap that I thought I almost cut you off. I didn't want to do it again. When he goes to say goodbye to quote-unquote friend who seemed like a person he may have known for maybe 72 hours, 70 years ago. That's
more than long enough for him to fall in love. We know this.
That is for sure. But he doesn't really seem to have any great attachment to the man. He kind of seems like he's kind of like guilted and into going to say goodbye to him. Anyway, he declines to give up his powers to the man. Reasonable decision. And, he wakes up and his powers are gone. And then the plot from there to get from that point until the final confrontation is just one giant clusterfuck of twists that don't make any sense, character turns that don't make any sense. You just go from scene to scene to scene, and by the time you get to the end, you're just like, what the fuck was that? Like, how did any of those scenes make sense or build to this moment?
Yeah, it's truly bizarre. Like, if the grand plot here is take his powers by force, how does anything that happens between then and the end contribute to that? I know that it's his son that had the plot to try and kill Mariko, so the assassins that are trying to get them, that's all fine. But the stuff that's happening with Viper and Harada trying to, like, steal Mariko away, I mean, I guess to lure Wolverine after her?
If the Viper was that powerful, the Viper, by the way, is Poison Ivy, who's been borrowed for the X-Men franchise. If she's like that powerful, manipulative, why are they bothering to do this convoluted scheme to make all this happen? Why do they need the granddaughter there at the end? Why?
Yeah, like they could have just kidnapped. Like she puts this spider in Logan's mouth that attaches itself to his heart and somehow suppresses his healing factor for no real reason that I can think of. Like, are they trying to kill him? They need his power. If she could do that, why didn't she just sort of kidnap him and do what they were going to do?
And it's not like doing that took his power, so why was that done?
Well, when I first saw it, I thought that this spider was... Because there were two that Logan sees in jars, and I assumed the other one was in Yashda, and that it was just... They were, like, connected, and it was draining his power, but in watching again, I think it actually is just there to suppress his powers.
And also, he takes, like, a shotgun blast to the stomach at one point. Like, without his powers, that's the end.
They're not off, they're just not working at full strength, because he takes a lot of stuff that should, like, derail him, and it just sort of...
But why are they trying to derail him?
I don't know. Like, if the plot with the Yakuza going after Manako is not what Yashida wants, then why are they, like... They should be trying to help keep Wolverine alive, because they need him.
Okay, so I'm trying to... I guess this is the idea. Is that Yashida, Wolverine's friend from Nagasaki, knows that his own son is trying to make a play for the company. Right?
Yep.
And it seems like the simplest way to prevent that from happening is just to keep Yashida alive. So when we find out that he's been alive all along, none of this makes any sense.
No.
Right? Because if he's just alive, then his son can't do anything.
Also, he could kill his son.
Yes. Like, he's clearly, like, does not care about him.
No.
That's not... Like, their relationship is broken to too large of a degree.
Yeah, like, he's named Mariko the successor to the company, so that's why he starts trying to kill his own daughter. But, I mean, why do any of this if you're just going to end up still being alive? Why don't you just kill your son if you think he's a threat and just steal Wolverine's power while he's sleeping in your house?
Yeah. Now, let's say he thought it was too dangerous to try to openly kill his son. Or not openly, but like let's just say he thought that was impractical somehow.
Even though all those ninjas totally take out all his men at the end.
Yeah. Let's just accept that for what it is.
Okay.
Was his plan so he decided that the best way to get Wolverine to his facility to complete this transaction was to put his granddaughter in the middle at his funeral in this giant death trap and use Wolverine and his grandson? Stepson? Who's the guy who shoots arrows?
Harada. That's sort of... He's the head of the ninjas that works for him.
Like an unofficial adopted grandson of...
Yeah, he used to go out with Mariko.
Okay.
Yeah.
There we go.
Well, he's there to protect her. The people that try and attack her are the Yakuza who are working for her father.
He was hoping that Legolas and Wolverine would save the granddaughter,
yes,
get her away safely,
yes,
and then that would allow the Viper to eventually kidnap, that would allow Legolas to eventually kidnap the granddaughter.
Well, I guess they suppressed Wolverine's powers so they could take him more easily, because when him and Mariko are on the run, Harada and Viper are like actively looking for them. So I guess they thought if they suppressed his powers, they'd be able to get him more easily. But he still has claws and shit.
But why, if they're able to put a robot spider in his heart, why not just, like, knock him out, like, with some poisonous sleeping gas, whatever the fuck, and bring him there?
Those don't work on him. He heals.
Why not use the metal technology you had to trap him to keep him? Like,
there you go. I don't know.
It's so convoluted, and by the time it all unravels, you're like that. You're so confused by it that it's nearly impossible to be invested in the final battle, which is a long final battle and not particularly exciting.
Yeah, and they feel the need to make the suit like giant because it's meant to be evocative of the Silver Samurai, who is a famous Wolverine villain, and he is normal sized. And, like, they instead make it this sort of robotic, almost, like, giant thing, which takes a lot of the sting out of it. Like, I'd be all for watching an actual samurai kick Logan's ass in a fight, because that's what happened in, like, this is based on the sacred Wolverine in Japan arc, where Logan goes there, and despite all his powers, he gets his ass handed to him.
Love Japan.
There you go. He gets his ass handed to him because he's not trained like they are and he's not disciplined and he learns and blah, blah, blah. That would be fine. Instead, we have Wolverine fighting a giant robot thing. And it's so long and it's dull. And Viper's off shedding skin and stuff. And
I just don't understand why the plot was so convoluted. I don't understand how it helped the movie at all. you're not making the usual suspects. You're making a guy with metal claws fighting ninjas.
Yeah. How do you fuck that up? That sounds amazing.
I try not to rewrite movies like that because it's super obnoxious, but I was like, okay, they had two goals, which was to quietly build to Days of Future Past and to tell a Wolverine story that was kind of separate from everything else. These are admirable goals for this movie. In fact, a lot of the decisions they make, I think, are good. One, they ignore X-Men Origins Wolverine. They take Wolverine out of his comfort zone to a certain degree. It's a Wolverine adventure. They introduce new characters that we otherwise would never see, probably in an X-Men movie. All these things are good. What if they did... this should have been like an unofficial Wolverine Mystique team-up movie, where if you want to have like some deception, like Mystique kind of lures Wolverine to Japan somehow, and she needs him to help her, basically, like Magneto's trapped there or something, or whatever the fuck, and like Wolverine inadvertently helps her do that, and Wolverine like conquers some fucking demons or whatever the fuck, like he has to always do. Like, because that would at least make more, like, I don't know, like I'm just trying to think of anything much more clever or appealing to do with this movie than what they did.
Yeah, I feel they did two plots at once and tried to make them fit, and they didn't. Like, either have Mariko get kidnapped and have him fight the Yakuza, or have him fight the Silver Samurai and all the ninjas. Like, they don't slot well. They contradict each other, if anything. They don't work together. And like you were saying about Mystique, I was actually thinking, like, I was looking at the cast of this movie, and it's literally just Hugh Jackman. Everyone else is, certainly in the Western world, pretty much unheard of.
Hiroyuki Sanada is from The Last Samurai.
Yes. But, in terms of, like, Hollywood huge stars...
Yeah, it's just Jackman.
And I'm looking at Viper, and I'm thinking, this is a really weird pull for them to, like, from the comics. Like, she's loosely tied to the Silver Samurai, who isn't actually in this movie, but I guess that's why they put her in. I think of her more as an Avengers character than an X-Men one. And she's played by Svetlana Chodchenkova. And I can only think they just wanted to have another white person in there who speaks English well. And I just thought, why wouldn't you just make this Mystique or someone?
So it didn't have to be someone we know, but just like someone who's actually a character.
Yeah, it's just a really weird placement, and she's got all these crazy powers, and you're like, well, why aren't you the villain?
And then she, like, I don't know. It was, and she's not very good in it.
No, she's really boring and, like, really nondescript.
And this thing is, like, Hiroyuki Sanada is like, you've seen The Last Samurai, right?
Yeah.
He's one of the most he out charismas Ken Watanabe and Tom Cruise in that movie. Like, he is the most like badass fighter dude you've ever seen in a movie that's still like a human being. And how do you take all that charisma and just give us that? I did like I'm gonna butcher the name, Rila Fukushima, who played Yukio. I thought she was pretty charming.
Yeah, she's fun. She's like mischievous little sister type character.
Yeah, and I think like that it probably would have been a more effective buddy movie if it was just these two together the entire time. I think they didn't devote enough time to her and the granddaughter to make either of them work really well.
Yeah, and it doesn't help that like Manako and Wolverine have zero chemistry, and their love story seems really forced. Like, she is his one true love in the comics. Like, she tragically is killed and whatnot. And so they felt they had.
Yeah, and it felt so forced and unearned. Like,
yeah, like they feel they have to put her in here, but I think, I mean, she's not bad, but there's nothing there really between them, and it just.
And they're like, she's not. They don't make her an active character. Like when she actually she kills her grandfather, right?
Yes, she stabs him.
Like,
yeah.
For all intents and purposes, like that didn't feel like a moment. Like that didn't feel earned at all. And I think I don't know. Like, and I don't want to say like, oh, too many. It's not that there was like too many women in the movie, but there was too many characters that they did not spend enough time developing, and she was one of them. But like honestly, besides Yukio, I didn't find any of the other characters they introduced interesting.
No, I like ninjas as a concept, so I liked that. it's a bad fight, but just watching the ninjas kick ass near the end, I was like, yeah, but then no.
Yeah, I'll say I did like the fight at the funeral. There was a, for pun not intended, an edginess to it. There was, like, it just felt like a much different fight than any other fight scene we'd seen in X-Men so far. Like, that felt like there was actual danger. Like, there was something that was shot very, very well. Then that transitions main fight sequence, which is a bit goofy, but, you know, also was kind of like a breath of fresh air in this very dour movie.
I liked him like launching himself claws first using the force of the train. That was pretty badass.
Yeah.
But...
Although I do think there's some... Was the Silver Samurai made of adamantium? I kind of started tuning out when I was watching it.
The suit is adamantium,
yeah. Okay, but there's a lot of other metal in the movie that's not adamantium.
Yeah.
I don't understand why... Like, I don't understand why Shinjin's sword is so easy. Like, I don't understand why Wolverine just doesn't cut through it. I don't know why. If he was, like... If you think about, like, the physics of him using his claws to launch himself on the train, the moment he puts pressure on the train, his claws should cut through it. I
mean, maybe Shingen's sword was adamantium as well. If his father is stockpiling it, maybe he has access to it, but...
Yeah. I guess, but like that seems like something that should not be unmentioned.
But then he's clashing blades with Yukio, so that would mean she would have to have an adamantium sword.
I don't think there's a ton else we need to talk about. Okay, so they bring back Famke Janssen as Jean Grey, and she basically just exists to haunt Wolverine in his dreams or nightmares. And Wolverine is living in regret about having to kill the nuclear bomb that was the Phoenix, that was destroying the entire Alcatraz and probably destroying the world soon thereafter. I guess it's kind of understandable, and it's nice that their relationship is officially entirely in Logan's head in this movie. Like, it's literally only in his head. But still, there's supposed to be like this genuine emotional core there that's supposed to like anchor this movie, and it rings false because the Jean Grey Logan stuff's been bullshit. So that was not something to pull on here. That was not earned in any way, and it's just it's like this huge wart on the X-Men movies. They keep like diving back into.
I would really hope that everyone watching would, appreciate this is all in his head and that it isn't just... Because, I mean, if you look at how many there are of these films and look at how many of them push this agenda, you could see why someone might think this is genuinely, like, how she would feel, that, like, she wants Logan to come and join her in heaven and whatnot. It's just... Yeah, it's really... problematic. And like, if you look at his love interests, you have Jean Grey, who he invents a relationship with. You have Mariko, who just literally is just a frail thing for him to protect, and he falls in love with in like less than a day. And then you got Kayla, who, I mean, we don't know the origins there, but she betrayed him and blah blah blah. But yeah, he just comes across as a really weird dude.
Yeah, I mean, like, Wolverine being bad with women seems like something that would happen to Wolverine, but once again, it just, when it's all in his head, like, you're either portraying him to be a sociopath, or there's actually some emotional, or not sociopath, but like some kind of psychopath when it comes to women, or there's actual emotional core there that you're leveraging for pathos in your movie, and it's definitely not the latter.
No.
Like, the fact that it's not bad that he's haunted by her, because he did kill her, but this idea that they're in love or whatever, like, how it just doesn't make any sense. And it's like they just need to drop it. And that is kind of like the silver lining of the older X-Men franchise, older X-Men characters probably never getting another big film again, is that they never have to explore that again.
Yeah.
That
I think it ends the right way in the next movie, but we'll talk about it then. But I hate it. I guess there's two things we need to talk about. We'll tackle one of them first. So it's directed by James Mangold, who is a perfectly fine director. Walk the Line, etc. But it was originally going to be Darren Aronofsky who wanted to do this as like an R-rated movie with like extreme violence and sex and stuff. And they were shy from that idea at the time. Fast forward a few years, Deadpool comes out as rated R, huge hit. Wolverine 3 now being talked about as an R-rated movie. Like, imagine if Aronofsky had gotten his way and we got there quicker and we got a better, more exciting film out of it.
Yeah, I mean, I think Darren Aronofsky is just a more creative director than James Mangold. Like, James Mangold has made some good movies, and he's made some okay movies, and he's made some bad movies, because he's a very workman-like director. Like, he doesn't strike me as a director who's going to get more out of a story than that's there. In this case, it even seems like he got less of it. But yeah, Darren Aronofsky, you know, for any of his faults as a filmmaker, is very creative. And it would have been nice to see someone who actually has their own vision for the story or for the character get a chance to do it. Like, that's why I was crushed. What's his guy? The guy who does the Simon Pegg movies. What's his name?
Edgar Wright.
Edgar Wright. Like, that's why I was crushed when he didn't get to do Ant-Man, because it's like, it would be nice to see like an actual director get one of these movies and just do something creative with it. And that's kind of like, I feel that's kind of what happened here, is that we had a really creative director, and then we got a workman director, and we have a mediocre movie as a result.
Yeah, and I would call him very sort of paint by numbers, very just sort of, it's efficient. Like, yeah, none of it is, to sum up this whole movie, it's not bad, it's boring. Like, yeah. It's got a big giant plot hole in it, or several, but in terms of how it's shot, it's all perfectly fine.
Like, in comparison, The Last Stand and Origins Wolverine barely feel like movies. Like, those are like The Room, near the level of The Room and Troll 2 in terms of how bad they come off. This feels like a movie. It just doesn't feel like a very good movie.
It's just not very interesting.
And I think the other thing we definitely need to get in is that Magneto and Professor Xavier pop up.
Yes, and that was my second point.
That was honestly like that and Jean Grey were pretty much the only two things I wanted to bring up in this entire podcast. So we're almost done, people. I don't know how you have a 2-minute scene with 3 great actors and make them seem so uncomfortable with each other. Like, I just doesn't, like, why was, I mean, and you know who wrote that scene, right? Your favorite person. Simon
Kinberg.
So this is the scene. Wolverine is about to get on the plane, and this was the moment Magneto and Xavier decided to reveal themselves. Magneto comes up from behind him and just starts shaking things to get his attention instead of, you know, talking like a normal human being would do. Wolverine, like, how do you also not like write in that Wolverine smells? I'm like, come on, like, there's just the basics. Like, where are the basic stuff when it comes to X? He puts his bone claws at Magneto, but Charles Xavier shows up. Where's Charles Xavier, you might be wondering. Charles Xavier has already gone through security. He's waiting at a gate somewhere and does the most awkward wheelchair driving I've ever seen a human being do to get around people to get to Logan. Like, it felt like a mirage. It felt like they green screened him on the wheelchair into the scene.
They probably did.
And then like he just talks in like fucking codes and riddles for 30 seconds, and they cut away.
Why is he in a wheelchair? This is after The Last Stand. Did he get unlucky?
His twin brother also fought Apocalypse and has no use of his legs.
Why would you pick another person who can't use their legs?
Well, it's his twin brother.
No, why would his twin...
I know.
I always assumed it wasn't a twin brother, it was just any old person, and he was using his powers to make people see him the way they always saw him, and he actually looks completely different now.
Thank Brett Ratner, not me.
I call bullshit on that.
You're not the only one with gifts. And also just like Magneto, like, I don't know, they did like some weird makeup. It didn't look like Magneto. It looked like they were trying to like age him since the last one, but not so much as Days of Future Past. Like, It looked really goofy.
Surely real life would have done that. Like, this is several years later.
But like, you know what I'm talking about, right? Like his face.
Yeah, he looks strange. Yeah.
Yeah, and it certainly doesn't look like how he looks in Days of Future Past, where he looks, like a human being. I don't know how you make. It was just such a bad scene.
I mean, I would explain it by saying that it seemed like it was probably shot in a day, and like they were just sort of thrown together after not working together for a long time. But reading about this, they shot this while they were shooting Days of Future Past, so they should have been like back on it.
I just don't understand. And I guess there's also an end credit scene that we should mention.
Yeah.
Yukio gives Wolverine his yellow uniform, which we never see again.
It looks so much cooler than I ever imagined a Wolverine real film costume looking. Like, I always figured they avoided it because it was going to look comically bad, but it's like, that looks kind of badass. I'd like to see him wear that.
I would like to see a Wolverine movie where he wears that, and that does not happen.
Never happens.
And while this movie, I mean, they structure this movie basically to be like, you don't need to see it. Nothing here is important. And when you don't have a good movie and you have also that going for you, you really feel like you just wasted your time.
I will say, when I saw this movie in theaters, that first post-credit, the mid-credit scene where he is approached, I was like, cool, they're going to bring it all back together. But watching it now, I'm like, this isn't well done at all.
Yeah, well, it's one of those things where it's like, at that point, like, you're so desperate for X-Men to get back on track and to see the return of those two characters properly that you're just happy about it, but it's not a good scene.
And I think the fact that this comes after Avengers is very telling, because obviously that's a big team-up movie, and all of the promotion for Days of Future Past would be, look how big this cast is. So I think that had to be in this I mean, Marvel are now making these, all of their films come with post-credit sequences. Some of them are actually very important. So I feel they feel they have to do that, and then it also is teasing the Avengers-style team-up later. Yeah.
It's, I won't give them too much shit for it, but it's probably one of the few things you could be excited about in theory, and it's terrible. This is actually, in fact, the only X-Men movie I did not see in theaters, which is actually kind of crazy. But it's so forgettable and boring, and you don't need it.
Yeah, I was kind of excited about it before it came out. Like, all the pre-release material, it used all these cool images, and there's the drawn artwork of him. And...
yeah, like, they had some really good posters for this. It's just, it's a failure. That's honestly what it comes down to.
And I'm sure it's the same front cover, but the one here, he's holding a katana sword in one hand and he's got his claws in the other. I was like, yeah, that seems cool, but there's none of that. He never uses a sword. I mean, he uses the crazy energy one, but...
yeah. I don't... I think what disturbs me is that they think that this was a success.
Well, financially it was.
Well, all the X-Men films have been financially successful to a degree.
Sure, but this almost, made well over 3 times its budget.
Yeah, but it just...
this is going to be one of the more financially successful ones.
Yeah, but this is just, there has to be someone in there you're going, you fucked up a lot of things in this movie, don't repeat them in the next one. And what's disturbing is that it feels like they are already. It's definitely not an ensemble piece. So right away, they don't recognize that Wolverine should not be... you can call the movie Wolverine all you want, but it should not be just about Wolverine. They already are doing weird things with the timeline, why is Logan so old? Why is Xavier not dead? Why? There's rumors Mr. Sinister is involved, so we're going to have another Wolverine movie about stealing powers, combining powers, all that bullshit, which is just such a can of worms that you should not introduce in your movies when you have so few movies. This is not like you're pressuring to come out with 50 comic books a year. You don't need to do that stuff. It's dumb. It's goofy.
It is, but unfortunately public opinion is that Wolverine is the coolest X-Man, therefore he must have his own movies. But
that's just one aspect of the issue. And it can't be that hard to make a fun movie about Wolverine.
Yeah, I mean, this could have been a good one.
All the pieces are there.
Well, I think you need a slightly better cast. I think you need some names in here or some better people.
Bob's story, like, theoretically, this should work. In a broad outline sense.
It should, but it doesn't. So we were talking previously about, the dark days are over, we've got First Class now, and then I completely forgot how really boring this is. Obviously it is better than the two very, very bad ones, but it's another dip. So we've gone up and up, down, down, up and down again. So that's where we are left with the franchise. So I am very much looking forward to our next episode where we'll be covering X-Men Days of Future Past, one of my favourite X-Men movies. But until then, this has been another episode of Mike and Matt's X-Cellent Adventures. You can find this everywhere you can think of, pretty much. You can find it on YouTube with amazing artwork done by our own Mike Thomas. Truly a savant with Microsoft Paint. You can find it on SoundCloud, on iTunes, on Stitcher, on Enter the Real World, on 411 Mania, on Facebook of all things. So if you could go to the various mediums, subscribe, like, comment, whatever you want to do, as long as it's positive. We will not hear any negative feedback about this podcast from you. How dare you? But for now, I have been Matt Waters. You can find me at Matt C. Waters on Twitter. He's been Mike Thomas. You can find him at
MC Thomas 216.
MC Thomas 216. So, thanks, Wolverine, for going to Japan. Woo!